G'day and welcome to another edition of the Aussie Ideas Man. So many videos to watch, so many things to disagree with. It's hard being a troll these days. Nevertheless, this one's all about why I think the CEOs of Aptera have no empathy at all for their customers or potential customers. I guess they're already customers if they've made orders. They're investors. They just don't have any empathy at all for the people they supposedly say they're humbled by and appreciate. And this is all about what many of the fanboys, the dyed-in-the-wool Aptera disciples of years ago, are complaining about. I was going to do this on the strength of the Drive the Nonsense video, or Drive the Ignorance, I think is a better term. The Drive the Ignorance video, where they talk about how do they make a single launch edition and accommodate paradigm orders. Now, I was going to do that, but I got a gift in my lap this morning when I watched The Cretin and a new one that was about, is the accelerator program unfair? This is right after my video that said the Cretin didn't know how to be fair. So I thought, here's an opportunity to show once more that the Cretin doesn't have any concept of what is fair. It's a shame because most people in the world today are this way. But we should expect more of people who are influencers. Well, I'll just dive into it. You notice I've sped them up a bit, but at least not to the extent that you can't really understand what they're saying.
You're watching Drive the Lightning, your positively charged EV channel.
We have a special guest today, Chris Anthony, co-founder, co-CEO of the Aptera solar charge electric vehicle that we are in love with, and many of you are in love with, and he's going to talk about it in person. Thank you for being here, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for making the time.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
We can't tell you how excited we are about the launch edition. I mean, bravo.
Yes.
It was some things about it that, like the interior, I wouldn't have chosen that color. I wouldn't have chosen the outside color. But when I saw it, I'm like, it's perfect. This is what I should have wanted to choose anyway. But when I saw it, I'm like, it's perfect. This is what I should have wanted to choose anyway. But when I saw it, I'm like, it's perfect. This is what I should have wanted to choose anyway.
Somewhere in one of his recent videos, Chad says, I'm not going to have that configuration. I'm not going to switch to the launch edition.
Hello everyone, it's Steve with Aptera Owners Club. In this video, I want to talk a little bit more about this Aptera accelerator program because it's kind of fun to watch the leaderboard. This has been going on for 3 days. So as you remember, this is the program that was started on the 27th. And what they're doing is they're essentially auctioning off the first 2,000 Aptera to investors based on the total amount invested. And so you have to invest an additional $10,000 to get on the list. So if you invested like $1 million before and you don't invest $10,000 extra dollars, well, you're not on the list. So that is their way of getting kind of kickstarting the funds to get into manufacturing. And a lot of people felt that this was unfair. I see a lot of comments saying some rich person is going to jump the line ahead of me. And that feels in some way unfair. However, I think the Aptera is at a place now that they need money to get into production. It's either you get the person that's been waiting for 2 years, like me. I put my money in, I put my order in, I think the day after they relaunched. So I was probably one of the first 500 people. Or maybe first, I just barely missed the paradigm. So I was like in the first 300-400 people.
It's very unfair. Those who ordered the Paradigm Edition no longer can get what they ordered. They were given a scheme that they subscribed to, which meant that they were amongst the first. Sounds like it was about the first 300, I'm not sure. But it was a scheme where they were amongst the first, and they could get the specifications they wanted with this. I guess it's just a badge that says Paradigm Edition. But in any case, it was going to be the first of the production trikes. Now, next thing you know, they have the launch edition come along, where if they don't choose the specific configuration of the launch edition, they go 5,000 people behind the original order that they should have been in. Now, that's a massive setback. To put 5,000 people in front of them is a huge setback. Now, some of the people that have Paradigm Editions bite the bullet and turn around and forego what they wanted just so that they can keep their early place in the line. But what happened then is that straight after the Paradigm Edition is revealed, they come up with a double whammy of the accelerator program. So just imagine you had a Paradigm Edition and you went, okay, now I have to suck it up and take what is given. so that I can still be an early receiver of this silly trike. So they do that, and then within days, they get this other program that says that now 2,000 people with a bit of money are able to jump ahead of that position that you tried to maintain. And you don't have the money because you weren't an investor at all. You just wanted the Paradigm Edition. You just put a deposit down. You're not even an investor. You're not interested in investing. And yet, next thing you know, all these thousands of people are ahead of you. This is totally unfair. And the cretin's justification is completely wrong. It is so wrong. It is selfish. And it's this principle of I get mine sooner, so it's got to be right. That's not ethical at all. It's a good idea because other people get theirs sooner, so it's got to be right. Getting their Aptera sooner is not doing the right thing by those people who, when they ordered a Paradigm Edition, were just told that that was how it works. Now, I'll give you an example of this warped logic and what it's like. Many, many decades ago when I was at school, I learnt of an ancient race, and I believe it was the Greeks from memory, but I may be wrong. But this ancient race used to execute babies if there were any birth defects whatsoever. And I mean any birth defects. We were told that if a baby had birthmarks, red blotches on their skin, if they had birthmarks, they were executed. And the principle was this, the logic, or call it the ethics. The logic of it was that as a nation, they had to remain strong. And anything that looked like a defect, and of course it wasn't just birthmarks, that was an extreme case. It was maybe club feet or missing fingers on a hand or even the hand missing altogether. Just birth defects where they could live through it, but they weren't useful to the nation if they were ever attacked. And this is what they were preserving the nation for. It was a survival of the fittest mentality, and they didn't want to become slaves to other neighbouring nations that they thought if they weren't perfect, if they weren't able-bodied, they would wind up slaves to some other nations. The logic was execute any birth defects in babies. The good of the nation is a consideration, but the baby with a minor defect that could have had a good life was executed. That's not ethical. That's not fair. Not at all. And it's not fair to the mother either, or the family, the father and brothers and sisters that might have loved that child. This is a ridiculous idea, but it was real. This is what I was taught in school, that the logic was execute them at birth because we need to grow a nation of strong people. And I say that's the way people think these days. They look at something and they say, well, this is the greater good here. And it's not the greater good. And in the case of the cretin, the greater good is he gets it sooner and so might other people get it sooner. But it's unethical because somebody ordered a Paradigm Edition and didn't want to invest and didn't want to change from their 2 motors to 3 and didn't want the full solar and didn't want the colour. All of these things they have to forego and watch 2,000 people, minimum of 2,000, possibly 5,000 people or more, get in front of them in the line when the original deal was that they had a certain position in the line. Now, it beggars belief, but the fact of the matter is Chris Anthony and Steve Fambro have less ethics than the cretin. They have no concern for anybody. They use people and abuse people.
Hey, this is what you guys want. This is what we want to deliver, and just make that the most configured product be the launch edition vehicle.
We think it's so smart, and we don't know the stuff you know, but just to have one model to start with, that, like you brought it out in the webinar too about how that really could be a mess up going into production with all these options. So bravo again. We think that's going to get our Aptera quicker, and we have you to thank for it about how that really could be a mess up going into production with all these options. About how that really could be a mess up going into production with all these options. About how that really could be a mess up going into production with all these options.
Nice. I do have another question that came in from some of our viewers regarding the Paradigm Edition. Some of our viewers have ordered the Paradigm. Is that going to differ from the launch edition? Will there be something different for the Paradigm?
Yeah, so how it will work and how we discussed it with the marketing team is if you get a launch edition vehicle and you have a Paradigm order, you'll receive a launch edition vehicle Paradigm. So, the Paradigm Edition will be special, but those people are kind of all over the delivery chart, right? So some people have a 1,000-mile Paradigm. A lot of, maybe a third of them have switched over to the Launch Edition. So, but if you switched over to the Launch Edition and you get your vehicle first from the Launch Edition, then you'll receive a Launch Edition Paradigm. So the Paradigm will just be extra fun stuff that makes the vehicle special and obviously worth more too because it's a Paradigm Edition. So you can get a double whammy on how cool your Aptera is by getting a Launch Edition, Paradigm Edition that everybody will be envious of, hopefully.
Excellent. Well, they'll be happy with that answer.
They will.
Yes, they have a real problem here, and Chris has not explained it at all, as usual. He never makes anything clear. But what he is going on about later is saying that they can have this efficient method of doing the first 5,000 in an economical fashion, and yet they can still accommodate the Paradigm people. But we really don't know how. His words are so confusing.
I'm in love with the rose gold. Is that going to be exclusive to the Launch Edition?
Good question.
That is a good question. We haven't determined how many different kinds of center consoles we want to have available. The Launch Edition will have, the first center console, but by the time we build those first 5,000 vehicles and have the next 1,000 vehicles, we may just have more options for center consoles. You can get a black one or blue one or gray one. It may be just that the rose gold kind of goes away after the Launch Edition. Jason Hill loves the rose gold. He is a big proponent, but a lot of the vehicle configuration for the Launch Edition was really feedback from all of our people who had deposits on the vehicle. So we knew what the most popular color was and what the most popular interior was, and we could kind of run with those numbers. We knew that the vast majority, like 80% of people, had the full solar package. Not the vast majority, but the majority, like 65%, had the all-wheel drive package.
Let's get back to the LE edition because you LE. Is it okay to call it LE, or do you not like that Launch Edition?
Yeah, that's fine. If it catches fire.
Or California Edition. Okay, so
we've been calling it the Launch Edition. So
Launch Edition, we'll go with that. You said 5,000 is the plan, but if a bunch of people change their reservation to that, you would make more. Is there a top number? Is there a point where you say that's enough Launch Edition? Let's change it up.
That's a good question. I don't know that we've thought of a top number. Probably, 20, 25,000 Launch Edition vehicles might not be out of the question, but.
To really pull the curtain back and let us in, and we appreciate that.
If you're overtly honest, you're not crafting a message that can then bite you later. And I think a lot of companies have done that in our space and other spaces, countless times, where you try to craft the narrative, craft the story, project what you think your customers want to hear, and you tell them that, and then it gets further down the line, and maybe things get difficult, or maybe the product isn't what you thought it could be, and then you have to roll that back, and you just, nobody trusts you anymore. You haven't been open and honest, and you get to the end of it, and they're like, well, why did I ever support this? Why? I think if we're open and honest, and the capabilities of our vehicle, and the capabilities of our team, and the capabilities of our partners, and how we're going to get this to production, warts and all, that people will support us. I think everybody realizes it's a challenge. None of this is easy. It's been a rough. It's almost 4 years now, 3.5 years. It's been a lot of work, a lot of long days, a lot of innovative thinking, and I couldn't count the number of things that have blown up that we've worked on, literally sometimes. That you just have to, okay, that path didn't work, you got to divert and go on a different path, and fail quickly is another motto of ours. That don't be afraid to fail, but try to fail quickly. Don't drag something along for 3 months and then fail and then have to go back and do all that over again. Figure out a way to fail in a week, and if you fail, great. Okay, that doesn't quite work, I got to take a new direction. But I think that story about how we're doing it and the challenges is something that people recognize. Everybody has challenges in their life. Everybody has struggles, and a company goes through that just like people go through that. And there's a lot of great people behind Aptera, and I think we tried to make them as available as possible. We went to fully charged. We told the engineers, like, just tell people how cool it is to be a part of this project and what you're working on, and why it's different and important. A lot of these guys came from other industries and other jobs, and they believe in this mission and what Aptera is going to do for the world. And they're facing super unique challenges here in building the world's most efficient vehicles, and lightweighting and efficiency. Weird things like bearing efficiency. The wheel bearings in our wheel, they have to be just much more efficient than kind of anything else out there, because a 6,000-pound truck doesn't care about their wheel bearing efficiency. But when you're only burning 100 watt hours per mile, you really care about how much friction's in a bearing that's turning in the system. And it's a trickle down to all that stuff. The weight of the hinges, the weight of the seals, how efficient our solar charge controller is. We've got amazing efficiency out of our solar charge controller. It's like, we don't want to waste any of the power that's hitting, the solar energy is hitting our roof. We want that to go to the battery pack. We don't want to waste 20% of it. 4% of it, okay, that's like one of the most efficient power conversion devices in the world. That's great. So a lot of really huge accomplishments for a lot of great team members. And we've told them, just share the story just like we share the story. When people ask Chris a question, Chris answers.
For sure. And we love hearing the story, and so do our viewers. It's amazing what you've done and what you're going to do.